जमात अहमदिया का अकीदा ख़त्म नबूवत कैसे साबित होगा? Now I have given you what is their belief. Now I want to give you, in the light of that, complete belief. My emphasis is always in this discussion and on any discussion on complete belief, not just belief, complete belief. Okay, so if Jamaat Ahmadiyya wants to establish their complete belief, what they need to do, please pay attention. Okay, जमात अहमदिया को अपने ख़त्म नबूवत के अकीदा के 4 अज्जा को कुरान की कतई आयात से साबित करना है. अहमदिया जमात must establish 4 parts of their belief from the qat'i ayat of the Quran, from definite ayat of the Quran. And what is qat'i mean? According to Mirza Ghulam Qadyani, qat'i mean those ayat of the Quran which have only one tafsir. There is no other tafsir possible for those ayat. This is the definition of qat'i ayah, or a definite ayah. Now Jamaat Ahmadiyya needs to prove 4 parts of their belief from the qat'i ayat of the Quran. If you can't do that, then again another deceptive narrative in the public, or fake narrative, that the beliefs of Jamaat Ahmadiyya, they are established from the qat'i ayat of the Quran. Stop saying that. If you still want to say that, then prove these 4 points. Point number 1, बराह रास्त नबूवत, खा वो शरई नबूवत हो खा गैर शरई नबूवत हो, इस पे मोहर लगना और ये दरवाजा क़यामत तक के लिए बंद होना साबित करें. This first point is very important. Let me explain why. The first thing they need to prove is Khatmun Nabuwa. Hello, oh people, please understand this point. This is point number 1. This is the first part of their belief. Khatmun Nabuwa. They give the impression that the Khatmun Nabuwa has happened only in the sense of Brahiras Nabuwat, and not in the sense of Zilli Nabuwat. First you need to present, because it is part of your belief, right? Who can deny that this is the first point of their belief, that prophethood has ended, right? And their caveat is, their explanation is that the prophethood that has ended, the door that has closed, the prophethood that has been sealed in Yomul Qiyamah, that is the direct prophethood. Bring us those ayat in which you can prove that prophethood has been sealed and door has been closed, and then we can check that is it only for direct or is it for categorical closing the door. You see the point? So that is the reason. If you guys remember, I had a debate or dialogue with one of their guys, Azim Bhatt, right? And this was exactly the topic. And he did not mention this first part of their belief at all. And I was asking him again and again that please, if you are saying that the direct prophethood has ended, quote those ayat. If you are saying that the direct prophethood has been sealed, the door has been closed, quote those ayat. You know why I was saying that? Because once they quote those ayat, because they are the very ayat, they are the very verses which Muslims quote in order to prove that prophethood has ended. And the caveat, or you can say the deception or the twist or tahrif they have done, they want to say that, oh, these ayat are only closing the door of Barahi Rast Nabuwat. First you need to quote the ayat, and then we will see that is it only from Barahi Rast Nabuwat, or is it the categorically closing the door. So that is the first point. You need to present the ayat. Second part, नबूवत की एक नई किस्म जिल्ली, बुरूजी या उम्मती नबूवत का वजूद साबित करें. They need to establish from the qat'i ayat of the Quran that there is such a thing called zilli nabuwat, buruzi nabuwat, or ummati nabuwat. Because if you give something to someone, first you need to prove that that thing exists in the first place? It's a natural, commonsensical question. It's a logical conclusion that if you want to give this zilli prophethood to anyone, first you need to prove that there is such a thing as zilli prophethood, right? For example, very simple. Tell us one name, because Mirza Ghulam Qadiani is the point of contention. That is who you want to prove. You cannot bring him as the evidence, right? Because you cannot bring your claim as your evidence. It will be circular. So you need to tell us that name one person other than Mirza Ghulam Qadiani who was a Zilli prophet. So first you need to, or no problem, if you can't name a person, at least quote those ayat of the Quran which are telling us, and by the way, qat'i ayat, i.e. those ayat which have only one tafsir, only one interpretation, and that is there is such a thing as zilli prophethood. Point number 3, खास सिर्फ एक इंसान के लिए इस जिल्ली या बुरूजी नबूवत का जारी होना साबित करें. You need to prove that this zilli or buruzi prophethood, it started. What is the key word? Started. When? In the 14th century. For who? Only for one person. And that is Mirza Ghulam Qadiani. What I am saying here, I'm going to present to you as well. That according to Mirza Ghulam Qadiani, he is the only human being on this planet. First and the last human being on this planet for whom this new prophethood, i.e. Zilli prophethood started. Right? So you need to tell us that what are those qat'i ayat of the Quran which are starting this Zilli prophethood only for one person. It's a very specific claim because it was not given to anyone before, it will not be given to anyone after. It's a very specific claim. And specific claims have to be backed up with a specific evidence. I give you a simple example. Let's suppose if I say that everyone, for example, let me take an example. Okay, if I say that in London, there are doctors, right? That is one claim. Obviously, I don't need to produce the evidence. Everybody knows that the doctors are everywhere. So London is not exception, right? If I say that Mr. A lives in London and he's a doctor. Now that's a specific claim. Just by saying that there are doctors in London, are you listening? Just by saying there are doctors in London will not prove that Mr. A is doctor. The doctorship of Mr. A is a specific claim. I need to back up with the specific evidence. This is what is the difference between generic claim, there are doctors in London. That is a generic claim. It does not need specific evidence. But Mr. A lives in London and he is a doctor. That is a very specific claim. It needs specific evidence. Just by saying there are doctors in London, so Mr. A has to be a doctor. No, he doesn't have to. Right? So this is the difference between specific claims and generic claims. Now, point number 4. इस जिल्ली या बुरूजी नबूवत का अब क़यामत तक के लिए बंद होना साबित करें. People, are you listening? Look, these are the things. If you have any interest to understand the discussions between Muslims and Ahmadis on the subject of finality of prophethood, you need to understand these things very clearly. So, 4 things. Number 1, proof from the Qat'i ayat that Brahiras Nabuwat in both forms, Shar'i and Ghair Shar'i, has ended. Number 2, proof from the Quran that there is such a thing as Zilli prophethood. Number 3, proof from the Quran that Zilli prophethood was started for one human being in specific. Point number 4, proof from the Quran that Zilli prophethood has now ended till Yawmul Qiyamah. Now mean after Mirza Ghulam Qadiani, it has ended till Yawmul Qiyamah. Because you need to start the Zilli prophethood and then you need to end it as well. So this is what they need to prove from the Qat'i. Look, I am putting emphasis on the Qat'i ayat. Qat'i ayah mean with only one tafsir. If they, let me give simple example, okay? If they bring an ayah and I can prove that mujaddideen, those revivers whom Mirza Ghulam Qadiani has praised, who are the mufassirun, who are the mujaddidun, and Mirza Ghulam Qadiani has put them in a very high regard. If you bring an ayah of the Quran and I can prove from those mujaddidun, from those praiseworthy people of Mirza Ghulam Qadiani, from those, for example, Qurtubi, for example, Zamakhshari, for example, Ibn Kasir, okay, Mirza Ghulam Qadiani has a high praise for them. If I can prove from these mufassirun that the ayah you are quoting is not being interpreted or not being given the tafsir in the same way as you are giving them the tafsir or interpretation, it will prove that this ayah, according to your standards, is not qat'i. So this concept of qat'i ayah is very important, because they can't just drop ayah in the discussion, because their claim is that aqidah or belief can only be established through qat'i ayah, and qat'i ayah has only one interpretation. And if you can prove that this ayah has more than one interpretation, according to their standard, that ayah will cease to be qat'i and they cannot use that ayah. Clear? So this is the entire framework. Now,